Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Uncovered. I am Eric Sexton, which is actually God in German, the billion-dollar broker. Today's guest is Lisa Song Sutton, attorney turned entrepreneur, and this is a long list of businesses that you run. I've been excited to have you on because you have a unique perspective of real estate investing. So I'm going to list some of your businesses, and then we're going to get into an intro with you. So you are a attorney. You practice business litigation in Florida and Nevada. You were Miss Nevada, which is an interesting one. You own Liquid and Lace Swimwear. You are the owner of Engel & Volker's residential brokerage here in Las Vegas. You own Ship Las Vegas, which you have a couple stores of that. That is a shipping store. You own Sin City Cupcakes, which is an alcoholic cupcake company. And you are a general partner in the Veteran Fund. So, Lisa, thank you for being here with me today. I think this is going to be a fun session.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, before we get into your business world, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where'd you go to college? How'd you end up being an attorney?
So grew up in a small town called Sierra Vista. My father worked for the Department of Defense at Fort Huachuca, which is right next to Sierra Vista. So this is a small town 70 miles southeast of Tucson. So rural Arizona, and grew up there literally from elementary school all the way through high school. Went to college in Tucson at the University of Arizona, went to law school at the University of Miami, and then moved to Las Vegas after finishing school.
That is a quick summary. And you also have two dogs. This is the important part. Anyone who knows me knows Ruger Dog runs with me every week. So give us a quick summary on your two dogs.
So I have two corgis named Kimchi and Cupcake. And Cupcake is a certified hospital pet therapy dog. And weekly, she volunteers over at Summerlin Hospital.
That is one of the things we're going to talk about, is giving back to the community, even how you are able to fit that into your busy schedule. And the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, obviously Commercial Real Estate Uncovered, where we're talking things commercial real estate, is you invest in real estate and you own a brokerage, but you also own businesses that have brick-and-mortar stores. And I wanted to get your perspective on wearing all those different hats, what it was like when you started your first venture, which I believe was your cupcake company, and how you went through the process of identifying the right location and how did it fit right with your business and maybe even the budget. So just kind of going back before we got on this podcast, you were telling me you were practicing law and you got this idea to start this alcoholic cupcake company named Sin City Cupcakes. So tell me a little bit about that, and then let's talk about the journey about how you found your first brick and mortar store.
So with Cupcakes, a good friend of mine from Florida named Danielle, she ended up being my co-founder with the company. This is back in 2012. She called me and she was like, hey, I've been making these alcohol cupcakes. And I'm like, that's genius. You have to move to Vegas. Let's start the company together. And I always tell this to people who are starting out, in their business journey. It's okay to start small. And so what we did was, literally, we started in my home kitchen in Summerlin, but when we actually turned it into a business, we ended up leasing space from a shared space kitchen. So we started out small, kept our costs low, because we didn't really know how much time we'd actually need, and we didn't want to go out and get a big fancy brick and mortar bakery lease, which was going to be multi-year and perhaps do some tenant improvements. So we started with a shared space first, and I think our rent was like $500 or $600 a month. It wasn't.
Which could have been a lot at the time for the business.
Sure, but luckily, it wasn't like thousands,
Okay.
right? So, started with shared space kitchen, and then as the business grew, we realized we needed to get our own space, and then eventually we ended up down at on Valley View.
So the space that you found, was it already built out as a bakery?
We got super lucky. So it was actually a second gen space. And it was already previously used by a company that was making chocolates and cookies. So it was already like ready to go.
So you didn't have to go through the sometimes painful process of putting in a grease trap, bringing in coolers. I mean, did you guys have to change anything in that space?
So there were already coolers in there, which was really nice. Walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer. But the grease trap wouldn't come until later. We were already, I think, 4 years into that space.
Oh, wow.
And previous to that, clearly it had already functioned as a bakery. Water Reclamation came in and they were like, you guys are a food establishment. New rule, every food establishment has to have a grease trap. And so I fought it. I went to a hearing, the whole thing. And I told them, look, we're not cooking anything. We're baking. We're not frying anything. We don't even have fryers or a hood in our space. They still made us get one. And to this day, I hate it.
That's a common
Over-regulation again. Like,
that's a we're gonna
burdensome
get into
regulation.
some political things here. Don't you worry. Yeah, the grease trap is a huge deal when you're moving into a space, and I don't know, you might have a store that was a juicing store, and then it turns into a bakery like that. That grease trap is a big deal, and it's expensive. It's
and
very
monthly maintenance. Yeah,
it's monthly maintenance, but also like that's a big hit to a business. I mean,
Totally.
if there's a space that doesn't have it, they have to cut up sidewalks and tear down part of the wall. I mean, that's an expensive endeavor to take. Okay, so you got lucky on that one, the Sin City Cupcakes, and you guys are still in that space. How long have you been in that space?
It was 6 years.
6 years?
6 or 7 years.
So
yeah.
that is a lucky. So let's pivot then to your Ship Las Vegas store. Tell us a little bit about Ship Las Vegas, what that business is, and your first location and how you found it.
So Ship Las Vegas is an independent mailbox rental pack and ship store. So think like UPS store, but independent. So we service UPS, FedEx, and the Postal Service. Definitely does require a retail brick-and-mortar location. So our first location is right at Fort Apache and Hacienda. And found that space. And this was 2018. So I was able to get it for like $1 a foot on Fort Apache. And
it's not $1 a foot anymore.
It's not $1 a foot anymore. But back in early 2018, it was. And our other location is up by Nellis Air Force Base, and kind of same thing. It was like literally $1 a foot back in 2018. And that corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Craig Road, super busy. I think something, I don't know what the stat is, but I read something, it was like, 30,000 cars pass by there a month. Like there's just a lot of traffic there. But that particular area with Walmart having pulled out, it's a very challenging, or it was a challenging retail area back when we moved in there. So we were able to get it cheap.
Well, news about that super Walmart, they're going to be turning it into warehouse space coming up. I don't know if you've heard about that, but that's our neck of the woods. So, okay, so your first space that you rented was an industrial space that was a bakery, and then you had to go through the process of finding retail locations for the Ship Las Vegas store, which you said is like a UPS store. So you guys do things like you ship for FedEx, UPS, and have those the mailboxes, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So finding a retail location, were there any differences? It sounds like you're really well. You said you were lucky finding the industrial spot. Were there any big differences in having to rent the retail space as far as like looking for traffic counts, or maybe where employees would be, or just finding a void where there's no ship stores in those areas?
Well, number one, I mean, certainly just leaning on a professional who's versed in that asset class. So obviously, I have my real estate license. I'm very versed in residential. I own a residential brokerage, but I didn't go out and start doing my own commercial leases as a tenant. So I was really lucky to lean on a professional to be able to help find space. I just think that's so key. Anyone who's looking for space, like, work with an agent who is versed in that space, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, and then again, obviously different asset classes within commercial. So even that second gen space was found because of the agent. It was, Kathy, commercial agent who you know in town as well. She found that second gen space. It wasn't on the market. She had heard about it. And again, this being in the industry, you'll hear about spaces that aren't on the market.
100%.
Right? So just picking up the phone.
Shout out to Kathy Coe. She's a good agent here in town, does a lot of tenant rep restaurant stuff. So that is a great place to pivot. So you own Engel & Volkers, the residential brokerage. We'll talk real quick about finding that location, just because I found it, one of them for you. So I have to kind of pat myself on the back. But the specialization is a big thing. I've had a couple brokers on this podcast that are industrial specialists that do really big numbers, and that's one of the things we hone on. But one thing that mentioning about the brick and mortar store was not everything is online, and you deal a lot on the residential side. But when you and I were talking about your Henderson Engel & Volkers location, we spent a lot of time online looking at locations, and nothing quite fit the bill. And we finally just said, let's just jump in the car and drive around. And we found an area. You ended up actually over by the Henderson Executive Airport, which has some busy streets and is partially a warehouse. It's like a flex space, which I would have not thought you would have ended up in. But just as you mentioned, find somebody who specializes in it. Real quick, tell me about your Summerlin location, how you found that, and then the Henderson one, maybe how you found those differently, and how those have worked out, because your one in Summerlin's on Rainbow right now, I believe. Yeah,
so Spring Valley. So it's off 215 in Rainbow. And that's in kind of a traditional retail area. There's, we have like a nail salon next door. I think there's like a pet food place. It's just like a retail area. But what I love about our Raiders Way location, so and you know this, prior to that, our Henderson location was at the district. So again, full-blown retail, where it was like right in the heart of the district. Parking was difficult. It was 800 feet, I think, was the retail space of our previous office location there. And we didn't even have a bathroom in there. We if any of our agents had to go use the restroom, it was like exit, our location and then go around and go use the public restroom down the hall. And so what I love about our Raiders Way location is that it is like kind of forward facing right on Raiders Way. And so we got that Raiders Way address, which is really lovely as well. But then we have that flex space where it's the office in the front and warehouse in the back that we've been able to use. We actually just used it last night with a workshop that we hosted there. It was great.
So that's another cool lesson about like finding, dealing with a specialist. Like even I was online we couldn't find the right spot. So driving around, you ended up with a spot that you might have not even anticipated. Having that warehouse in the back and using it for special events, it's really cool. And that's my favorite part about this business is seeing how people actually utilize the space. So it's quite the experience of having to rent space, retail, warehouse, and then an office component as well. There's not a lot of people who do that on a basis where you're actually signing the lease and it's not some big company that you're just finding it, making the decision. You're paying the rent checks on all those things. But anyways, I want to shift a little bit to your residential real estate business because you wear a lot of hats and you. I don't know how you keep on top of all those things, but specifically running the brokerage and having a residential real estate team, I wanted to see if you had any insight or give me any tips on how you stay organized and stay on top of your agents and help them stay organized. Do you guys do like weekly calls or do you have? Let's walk us through your Lisa Sutton system of staying organized on the real estate brokerage side.
Well, first off, I don't do anything alone. So even in the beginning with all the businesses that you had mentioned, I have amazing operational partners in everything that I do. And we have great teams, great staff. In relation to Engel & Vokers, I was a buy-sell agent for 5.5 years, and we ran a team at Sotheby's and then brought the Christie's to Las Vegas, had that for 2 years. And then now we were lucky enough to acquire the Engel & Vokers brand February of 2022. And what I love about our residential team is that even though, it's a brokerage that's made up of individual agents, some teams, we all cohesively collaborate together, kind of like one giant team at the end of the day. So every Monday morning at 8 a.m., we have what's called our pipeline call. It's essentially the form of an office meeting, but it takes place virtually. Not physically in the office. It takes place via phone or via your computer. And it's just a nice touch point where every agent runs down very quickly their listings, their buyers, their renters, just kind of any hurdles that they have or what's going on and kind of what they have coming up for the week. And as a result, because everyone's on the call, they get a chance to hear about, kind of what's coming up. And immediately there's these matches that are made where they're like, oh, I've got a buyer coming in from California next week who's looking for a 3-2 in Henderson, and someone just talked about how they have an upcoming listing. So it's immediate pairings that get to happen, and it's just really helpful as well, even on the hurdle side, where they get a chance to jump in and say, hey, I just went through that with a client of mine. Here's who we used for the landscaping, or here's who we used for legal, or whatever it is. They're able to help each other.
Deals bring deals, so that collaboration is a big deal. So you guys have a pipeline call with everybody on it, and that's where you kind of compare notes. You guys have like team thread, like team text messages or WhatsApp going as well?
Yes, exactly. So we have like it's essentially housed on Messenger. So it's like one group thread where in real time, that's really where people can kind of find like boots on the ground, up to date, what's going on. So people will drop in there, just listed, just, pending, whatever it is, because also Jerry, who's our marketing manager, is also in that thread. So the second that someone gets something under contract, they like throw it in the group chat. Everyone's like putting like clapping hands emojis, and Jerry will be able to take that information in real time. And literally 10 minutes later, it's now on the Engel & Vokers Las Vegas Instagram that, Andrea has gotten such and such property under contract.
That's a theme that I've been hearing with successful agents, is that collaboration and how huge that is. I meet a lot of agents that want to go to some brokerage where they get 99% of their fee and they don't have any collaboration. And Dan Doherty was on this podcast a couple sessions ago, and their office, which is Colliers International, has a huge industrial presence with different teams, and that's one of the things he talked about was the you know, how the synergy that works there. Our office is the same way. We have a couple different industrial groups, and we all have a thread going, hey, I've got this listing or I've got this requirement. And more often than not, somebody has a solution for that. So that's cool to hear that, you know, it's a theme that keeps going with successful brokers. Now, owning the brokerage, I know you have a broker who helps you run it, and you've got a manager as well. Are there any things you look for an agent that you're bringing on? I mean, I always like to ask this question, like a red flag that somebody might be great on the surface and then they say or do something and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't good. Like what's a red flag that you keep an eye out for when, you know, a new agent that you're interviewing or just trying to get a vibe on?
Definitely red flag is just looking out for like basic consistency. So if they're not timely and consistent, especially in the first few interactions,
Okay.
immediate red flag. But what I love looking for with agents is not necessarily that they're a top producer from whatever brokerage they're at now. I love looking for folks that are coming from like extreme customer service industry.
Okay.
So, for example, you know, I love working with agents in particular who are coming from like the pools. If they're cocktail
like
servers,
waitresses or
yes,
nightlife.
but not just like any cocktail waitress or like any nightlife. Like if you look at the ladies that get hired on at the high-end day clubs here, so we're talking Wet Republic, Encore Beach Club. First off, it's extremely competitive to get hired, right? They don't just like hire anybody off the street, right? And these girls are going in for their interview in their bikini in like February. So that means you're dieting over the holidays. So like
If you're disciplined,
respect the discipline,
disciplined
right?
dieting over the
Respect
holidays.
the discipline.
Okay.
And then if you look at what their job actually entails, they are on their feet from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. in wedges, running around in 110 plus degree heat, 120 degree heat sometimes in the middle of the summer, dealing with every drunk guy with a credit card. Like their threshold and their level of patience and their level of resourcefulness, yes, is very high. And their hustle is very high. And so I love those kind of soft skills and intangibles that you can't teach someone. Someone has to have gone through that experience. And so then I'm like, okay, of course you can sell real estate. Like you'll be just fine.
So if you can handle a drunk tourist in June,
Yeah, exactly. Who wants a giraffe in their cabana by 2 p.m., by the way?
Yeah. So, okay. So that's a great insight though, because you're right. I mean, when you think about it, the skills used to be in nightlife or one of the day pools, they're disciplined because they're in shape. They have to have the ability to, be on their toes, dealing with drunk people with high demands.
These girls are not partying when they're working like this, right? They're hustling, they're running around. Yeah.
No, they're right. That is not a job I would envy. I know they run around and work their butt off, but that's interesting. There's actually a broker in our office who used to be a security guard at the Palms and is now one of our top producers. So that nightlife, I think in any aspect, being here in Las Vegas, there's a lot of talented people. And that's probably a pretty good exit plan for some of them because, that's only a lifestyle probably
sure,
you'd only want
life.
for a little while and then
shelf
staying
life
up till
in your 20s at some point, right? And then past that, what's next?
The idea of staying up till 4 a.m. in a nightclub to me right now just sounds daunting. I just want to like be at home with my dog. That's interesting. So you hire, you kind of lean into our city then with the nightlife where you're looking for.
There's so much talent here, of course.
There is. So speaking of Las Vegas, you're also a real estate investor. This is one that we've had a lot of good conversations about Las Vegas. It's 2024. It's an election year.
Yeah.
There's some crazy things going on. We're still kind of coming out of COVID. COVID was crazy in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Strip was actually shut down. What are some things you're kind of optimistic and excited for about the city? Like what's your your outlook here in Las Vegas for the rest of the year?
I'm very bullish on Las Vegas.
Why? What about it are you bullish about?
There's just so much growth here, right? And we're still in an extreme housing shortage. So that's part of why, our pricing. So, 5-6 years ago, our median sales price in Clark County for residential home was $250,000. Now it's like $460,000, which is a massive jump as a local, right? But if you look at migration patterns, especially 2020, COVID onward, there's an extreme housing shortage here. And so the supply is not keeping up with the demand. And you know this as well, right? I think it's over 80% of Clark County is still federally owned. And, there's an opportunity to continue to kind of unlock some of that land by leaning on our elected officials. which will make it, friendly for developers, that kind of thing. But all of that continues to take time. So I'm very bullish on Las Vegas and our continued growth.
I know you know her as well, but I had a Las Vegas City Councilwoman, Victoria Seaman, on here about 2 weeks ago, was running for Las Vegas mayor, and she said the same thing about the land because she has a real estate background. But for most people who don't know that, 80% of, around 80% of Nevada is actually controlled by the federal government, and getting that land in the private sector to be able to develop, whether it's commercial space or mixed use or residential, the process is daunting and it takes too long. It needs to be streamlined. Governor Lombardo has actually done some good things to kind of get that conversation going and put some pressure to try to maybe streamline that. So hopefully he's successful in that. So what about the sports teams here? I know you're often seen at the Golden Knights games and Raiders games. Like, how do you think the A's coming to Las Vegas are going to make some changes? Do you think we're going to get an NBA team at some point?
For sure. And I think it's just super exciting to get to be in a city before they actually start getting all of these major sports teams, and being part of that growth. I think it just shows the maturity of the city, and Las Vegas has always been an international destination. It's always been on the map, but I think all of that will just continue to make it more of a destination.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of also helped us grow up in some aspects. Like, I don't know if the sports teams have like a direct correlation of obviously there's some growth, but it brings people here, but just the recognition kind of on the map. I'm super excited for the A's to come here. I think an NBA team would be good, but it's that's real, like, kind of the public industries, but just being on the commercial brokerage side, I see new industries coming to Las Vegas that weren't here 10 years ago. So maybe specialty manufacturing, or we have a lot of distribution. So we've kind of like grown up and we're diversifying, which directly correlates what you were saying. We have a housing shortage here, which means your agents are busy. So your agents still with the higher interest rates, they're still doing deals and trying to find new buyers' homes here. Still
busy. Every week we're still working with buyers and renters who have moved here from another state, in particular really high tax states. And it just goes to show, even though we feel like it's been a huge jump from median sales price of $250,000 to $460,000, but for a lot of folks, especially from those moving from California in particular, they're just shocked at the affordability here for how much money, how much further your dollar goes in relation to the real estate that you can buy.
Yeah, and not having
or
a state
rent.
Yeah, that's right. And not having a state income tax is a big deal. I was with a friend of mine in Newport Beach, California, over the weekend, who is from Las Vegas, and he was just saying how much it stings when he has to write that check to California. But he's like, yeah, his family, his daughter lives there, so he's there by being a good dad. So one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is time management. I know we talked about your real estate brokerage in general, but just having one job and a family can be taxing. How do you stay organized, and how do you stay on top of everything that you're working on, as far as the bakery and investing in real estate, and then you're also a general partner in the venture fund, which we're going to talk about in a second. But how do you stay on top of all of it and not let anything fall through the cracks? I mean, do you have a system that you use, or walk us through how you're able to stay on top of everything?
So certainly just Google Calendar, but it's color coded in relation to kind of what it is, because each of my email accounts have a different color. So then when it gets overlaid into like one master calendar, there's just a lot of colors every day. But certainly, having some sort of system that works for you. For me, it's just having that visualization in the calendar. And then I also do a monthly calendar that I keep in my home office.
Like a physical calendar, like a paper?
Like a dry erase, dry erase monthly calendar, 1 month at a time. So that way I can at least kind of block out like travel, or like I know like where I'm going to be on like certain big things that are already in the calendar for that month. I can put that onto the dry erase calendar that's on the wall. And then I have this, again, visual representation of, oh, wow, I'm actually gone half this month. What do I need to pack in while I'm in Las Vegas? And then that'll change how I schedule things.
That's actually a really solid tip, because I keep everything on my Google Calendar or work exchange calendar, and it kind of gets lumped in and meshed together when you're looking at it on your phone or computer. But when you physically write it out on the month, you can actually see, okay, next weekend I'm busy, or I've got these meetings.
Or I'm gone every weekend, or whatever it is.
Yeah, even this podcast, like having this added to it, you just see it where it falls in on the month. That's a good tip. Keep a physical calendar.
Yeah, dry erase.
Just and do. What do you do that once a month? Just on the first, you sit down and go through everything. Okay.
Yep.
And then you mentioned before we got on here or on the podcast, you lean on your partners a lot. How do you How do you stay organized with them as far as like communication? You guys just text, or you guys use like Slack or something like that? Or what's a Lisa Sutton inside tip to dealing with partners?
Yeah, extreme communication. So that means it's every channel.
Okay,
It's phone, it's text, it's Slack, it's email. But we communicate the same in the sense that, like, if it's urgent, we're picking up the phone and like just immediately calling because you need an answer in real time, or there's a situation like there's a fire that has to get put out. So boom, it's a phone call. If it's less urgent, might be a text. If it's less urgent, it's an email of like, hey, can you get this to me end of day? Or hey, wanted to make sure that you had this on your radar. Let's talk about it tomorrow or something. It can be less urgent. So it's kind of like those are the priority levels of communication.
Okay, so just all of the above system. They so we were talking about you being a real estate agent, being bullish in Las Vegas. One thing that I like to ask people that are in here that have had some professional success: how do you personally invest? Do you have like an all of the above system? Like walk me through how you like to invest to save for a rainy day or for the future, or just growth in investments. Yeah.
Certainly real estate.
Okay.
I love investing in real estate. And then I also love investing in myself, which is why I have the companies that I have. I think you are your best investment in some ways. And so, so I've never taken outside capital or taken on investors for any of the companies that I have. I've always just used my own cash and pumped it in, and then you keep pumping it in as the business is going. So I love, investing into the businesses that I build. And then with venture, so I had angel invested for like 7 or 8 years. And that's just, you're placing bets on founders, and it's really early stage, and you're just kind of like, it's like
Hoping
a
it
feel
pops
good.
off.
Yeah. It's like a feel good thing where you're like, I really believe in you, But with venture, that's why I wanted to get into private equity and venture capital, because I was like, there's something here that I don't know yet. And I've never been on the founder side of raising money from VC firms. So how do I get into this and put myself in a position where I can learn from it, but I can also, turn an investment from it. And that's when I got into venture, and that's been now over 2 years.
It's kind of a more unique answer than most people. When I get people in here, they'll say they invest in real estate. Maybe they're playing an index fund or they have some mutual funds. But so you do a lot more, let's call it unique stuff, companies you start and that. Do you play in the stock market at all, or index funds or any of that fun stuff?
Yeah, I have kind of your basic, like UPS, Visa. Like I have like kind of basic stocks that like
the safe bets.
The safe bets. But I just kind of like set it and forget it. You just like forget about it. And just, again, it's nice to just have as an amalgamation of like your overall net worth, which frankly, I just use to leverage to buy real estate. That's
obviously my favorite one because I'm in the industry. I like investing things I understand. Obviously, warehouses is I eat, live, and breathe it. So that's where I like to go. So that's interesting. So as busy as you are, and I think this is a question for anybody who really leans into their career. I was at my office till almost 9 o'clock last night. I went to the gym and went back and worked. Sometimes I have to force myself to dial it back, really get away from work. I went on a backpacking trip last week, and I literally had to walk up a mountain where my cell phone didn't work and sleep next to a campfire to unplug. But how do you recharge, or like what do you do for fun? How do you keep yourself energized as far as not burning out?
Well, I think being an only child, I do really value my alone time. And so even though I am so busy during the day and there's so much always going on, I do, for example, try to schedule like Sundays. I don't put anything on the calendar for Sundays. There's a long period of time where years and years and years where I would work 7 days a week. And maybe just a couple of years ago, I dialed it back and I made it so that Sunday was my day to like not set an alarm. I don't schedule any like meetings, Zoom meetings, calls, like anything like that. I don't schedule it on a Sunday. And so that's been super helpful. But then also it's strange to say, but doing community stuff and like, especially the volunteering with Cupcake, that is so like rewarding and purposeful. And that definitely like fills me up, even though that's technically like an activity that I'm like going and doing. Definitely lots of fulfillment from it. So in ways like that does recharge me too.
And recharging doesn't necessarily mean you're sitting by the pool in a cabana. Like people have their different things. Like I love motorcycles and that's tiring. But when I get back, I'm in such a good mood when I go for a ride. So you like to spend time with your dogs, it sounds like, whether it's community service or just hanging out at home.
Of course.
Okay. That's a good one. So based on, you've had a successful career in many different venues. This is always one I love to ask. Somebody who's starting out as an entrepreneur, or more specifically a real estate agent, would you have any suggestions for them on where to start? Or maybe they've been in the business for a while as a real estate agent and they've kind of hit a wall and they just don't know what to do. Like any pieces of advice that you would give a struggling or a new agent?
Go learn something new about your industry. So there's so many places to learn, right? So whether that's attending a conference, joining a mastermind, taking an e-course, reading a new book about it, discovering podcasts like this, like learn something new about your industry.
Listen to this podcast. Sorry.
Learn something new about your industry that, could potentially have some sort of spark or get you excited about a different facet of it.
So networking is a big part of your, your process. I'm part of SIOR and NAOP and a couple other commercial real estate specific ones. I'm in EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. Are you, I mentioned those as examples. Are you part of any professional organizations that you go to regularly to help you do that?
Yeah, so I'm part of YPO, the Young Presidents Organization.
Great organization.
Great organization. And the thing I get the most value from is the forum experience. And I've leaned on my forum now better part of 4 years. And my forum has been so helpful, not only on the business side, personal side, kind of all of the above, because as a person, right, we have all these different facets and layers to us, and they end up manifesting for the most part in like the kind of day-to-day business stuff. But because we're all multifaceted, it's so crucial to have a group of people at your back that, really have your best interest at heart and are able to walk you through all the different challenges that you might have.
We've had this conversation before, and one of the things that I appreciate you talking about the forum is it's not only professional challenges, it's personal challenges, because those are so tied together. Because if you're struggling in one, so the personal side has been, I'm assuming, a big help for you to lean in and maybe get advice or even just vent. So that proximity thing's a big deal. Any other ones other than YPO you're part of that you regularly attend?
YPO is definitely the main, kind of organization that I'm involved in that helps me on like both business and personal side. I'm also on the board of Nevada Policy Research Institute. So with that, it's more, on the community side, on the policy side, but that's definitely something that's very important to me. And so that's why I spend time doing that.
That's a great organization. Yeah. The political side of this, we actually met during a political race. You were running for U.S. Congress, and I was running for state assembly, and we met because we're going to a lot of the same kind of venues. How has that affected your your professional world running for Congress? Like that's a big deal.
It was 10 months of my life that was the number one priority, and it was so wild. When you're in a federal race like that, it's certainly something like I've never experienced before. And frankly, it kind of felt like starting a new company where we're just, building the plane as it was taking off. It was an incredible experience. And even though I didn't end up winning the election, I'm so grateful that I had that experience to run. I met incredible people who to this day, I'm still friends with, have a personal relationship with, business relationship with. And it just taught me a lot about myself as well.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and it's part of the political thing, is it's an expression that I've heard you say a couple times: your network is your net worth. So that proximity is like a huge deal. If you want to, achieve something, the best place to go are people who have actually done it. So if you want to be a good industrial broker, find good industrial brokers and go have conversations with them. Is there any, do you have any stories of an example of like you wanted to do something and you sought out somebody who had accomplished that? That's a good example of proximity, and that network is your net worth kind of situation. That was a success.
Not only proximity, but also just being willing to invest in it. That's how I started the Ship Stores.
That's a great story. Tell us that real quick.
Yeah. So I had a mailbox at a local UPS store, and I was like, they'd auto charge my credit card every year, right? So I'd get the receipt, and I was like, oh, I don't really use it that much. Maybe I should cancel it. And then I wouldn't cancel it. And I was like, what is this business model? If I'm not canceling, other people are not canceling it. And I ended up talking to a friend of mine who had 3 UPS stores in San Diego. He shared with me the business model of how, the mailboxes are the steady recurring revenue. That's what keeps your lights on. That's what pays your staff. The shipping's ancillary and seasonal. And he was like, I would maybe consider an independent model as opposed to buying a UPS franchise, because then you can configure the store however you want and put in more mailboxes. So then I went up the street from my house in Summerlin to Postal Pros, a local independent store that I'd been a patron of. Went to Andrew, the owner, and I asked him if he wanted to expand. He said no. And so then I said, well, I think I'm going to open up one of these far enough away. It's not competition for you. I don't know anything about running a retail store like this. I'll pay you $10,000 if you let me follow you around for 2 weeks, and I'll capture all your processes and build you like a SOP book. And he said yes. And so that was how I learned about the business, by, again, that proximity of learning from someone who obviously already had a successful store.
And having the guts to actually go ask for that help.
And being willing to invest in it.
Yeah, but that's even involved some crazy. So you open the stores, and now you have your course. You're actually coaching people and have a course on other people opening it. And I think you said you have like 21 stores that
22 stores, that have opened all around the country.
So you went from learning to opening stores to now helping people, and now there are 21 stores that are open throughout the country.
There are 22 stores right now open all around the country. Another dozen students are negotiating their leases right now. It is so crazy. Like, it's so like fulfilling and amazing, and I'm just blown away at the level of action people are taking, and it's creating small business owners all around the country.
Well, it's one of the things that I love about my business is, being a commercial real estate broker, you meet entrepreneurs that they're risking all of it to start some sort of business. They might have a handyman service that they've been running out of the garage, and they hire somebody and buy a van, and they take their life savings and run a warehouse. And I love to be part of that, because if they succeed, you work with them long term, but it's really cool to see them do that. You're doing this on another level as far as walking someone through the process of having another revenue source, or maybe just quitting their job to own a business. So that's really cool. What's the course? How can people find the course online?
Yeah, so it's mailboxmoneycourse.com. mailboxmoneycourse.com. And it came about by accident. And because I was just responding back to people who were finding me online and asking how they could open up their own store in Name Your City. And I was responding back to these one-off emails. And then finally, I was talking to a girlfriend of mine, Cody Sanchez, who you know, and Cody was like, dude, if you don't start a course, I'm going to start a course. She was like, you have to start a course.
That's funny.
And so I did.
That's, it's, another thing is business online now is just wild. It's not just like Amazon, buying things, but you've got a pretty big social media presence on all the platforms. And we've had this conversation as far as even getting residential leads from Instagram and stuff like that when you lean on it right. So
and LinkedIn.
Do you have any tips for people who are trying to start being more active on social media that you would do, because you've been successful at it and your following keeps growing? What would you tell somebody who just wants to start on social media? So
first, flesh out your LinkedIn, because I literally handed out millions and millions and millions of dollars of referrals from people who have found me on LinkedIn.
What do you mean flesh out your LinkedIn? Just go through your list or your contacts?
Well, first off, flesh out your profile, right? Make sure it's complete, right? Okay. Some people don't even put their bio on there. They don't put a headshot. It's crazy, right?
Get a good picture and a good...
Update the work history, right? Update the community history. One, make sure your LinkedIn's updated. So flesh that out. And then secondly, connect with people that you know on LinkedIn, because then their connections see that you're connected. LinkedIn, I think, is one of the most kind of underutilized, underrated social platforms.
It's my favorite one. I love LinkedIn.
That absolutely has a direct ROI. I don't pay for premium. I've never paid for LinkedIn, and I am not kidding. I've literally made 6 figures off of LinkedIn connections.
I pay for LinkedIn. I love when any of those services ask for payments. I'm all about it, because I don't know. I guess I'm a sucker for it. But that's a great advice. That's my favorite platform. I've gotten a ton of business off of it. Being active, not even just posting things, but commenting on people's stuff. But commenting on substantive things, asking questions are a huge deal. So that's interesting. What about posting? Do you have any tips for posting on social media? Maybe a trend that's big, or a theme that you like people that you personally like to see that you'd tell people to try?
So 2 things. One, make it educational if you can. Try to post things that you've found helpful, or maybe things you have not found helpful. If you can share that online, I think it can be a really great place for people to learn something. And then 2, document. Don't create, right? You don't have to create posts. just document what you're doing. If you're working, if you're volunteering, if you're whatever you're doing, like feel free to document that as much as you want to. That's the beauty of social media, right? Because people are like, oh, I'm not on social. I don't want people to know what's going on in my life. Like, guess what? Your audience only knows what you post. So if you limit what you post and you're posting in particular about real estate, or you're posting in particular about, certain aspects of your business, that's all they know. So like, it's okay. Like your privacy is not invaded, but document it. Document what you're working on. Document what's working, what's not working. And then all of a sudden those are posts. So it's not that you have to sit there and think about, what am I going to post about? I have nothing to post about. If you're living a life, you have things to post about. That,
yeah, especially in your career, because you do a lot of this kind of examples of a situation you might have come across. Like I got this idea from you actually, where if you're doing day-to-day business, like I'm in commercial brokerage, people are going to follow me who might be interested in that. Like I had a situation with an appraisal over the last few days,
that, yeah.
And I told the story of what happened. And I even had a newspaper shoot me a DM,
tip.
Be like, tell me.
It's a good tip, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, go through the process of what you do for work, or maybe good things, bad things, because other people are going to have those same situations and find the information either interesting or
useful.
Useful, 100%. So that's a great. Just be active on it. So it's a interesting thing. So speaking of social media and being up to date, I always love to ask this question: how do you stay up to date on the economy, the real estate market, just all the ventures you're in? There's a lot of news sources out there, but how do you stay up to date with the market and what's going on in your world?
So on a weekly basis, there are two different title companies that send me not only, they give you those market updates, all those graphs, right? So it's kind of up to you to like decipher, and kind of pick and choose, but you can also whittle it down to zip code. So I love that I get a market report on like 89135 and 89138. These are the fastest appreciating zip codes in Clark County. In Summerlin, it's where the bulk of our SFRs are located. Mm-hmm. So I love just staying on top of that. And even on the venture capital side, there's some really great newsletters out there. There's one called Strictly VC. And it's a newsletter that kind of aggregates quickly all the news that's going on in that industry, and it puts it in your inbox really quickly.
Oh, so it does like a summary and it sends you an email. Mm-hmm. So do you, going back to the title company, so I'm assuming you went to a specific title company and asked them just to send you like notice of defaults or closings or that kind of thing?
So notice of defaults, notice of sales, and then market reports.
Okay.
So you can just ask them and to put you on their distribution list, and they just add you on. It's no big deal.
Our team does the same thing. That's a really good tip. If you're in commercial real estate, get a hold of your title rep and tell them you want to be on those lists, because it gives you a really live, up-to-date idea of the transactions, what things are selling for, and if there are any upward trends of defaults or foreclosures potentially. Do you read any specific like news sources? Like, are you like subscribed to like 50 newspapers? I imagine you getting like the Wall Street Journal and Las Vegas Review Journal all delivered early in the morning, and you read them cover to cover. Do you have any like news sources that you read regularly?
Not a particular one, okay. Just because I do also feel like there's so much like inherent bias now, right? Especially. So I just like to, just kind of, it's strange to say, but I feel like I get a lot of my news from like Twitter.
I use Twitter all the time. I love Twitter.
I get a lot of news from Twitter, strangely, just because it's kind of high level, what's trending or whatever. But I think just, kind of staying on top of like what's going on in the world, I think it's super important.
Okay. So a couple fun questions towards the end of this podcast. What was your favorite college course that you took, whether it was law school or regular or your undergrad?
I had a pre-law minor when I was in undergrad, and what I appreciated about that is that it was a thematic minor, so you got to take courses from all different areas. And one of the courses I took was a negotiation class, and that was from like communications department, and it was a negotiation class, and the guy was a former CIA agent. And so that was a really fun class. It was a whole semester of that.
Okay, that's a good one. What about a favorite book, whether it's business or fiction? What's one book you would tell people to read?
Oh, there's so many. I love Tools of Titans. It's by Tim Ferriss, and it's kind of like this amalgamation of all the high-level podcasts he's done and all the amazing people he's interviewed. And it literally, if you could like condense the whole podcast episode into like 1 or 2 pages. So it's this whole book. It looks like a dictionary. It's called Tools of Titans. Looks like a dictionary, but like you can read it 1 or 2 pages at a time because it's like a sliver of whoever that person was. So it's like all these different people that he's interviewed, and it's high level questions of like, what do you eat in the morning? What's your routine? How do you stay organized? Like whatever it is, if you could have a billboard, what would it say? Like, it's like these random questions, and it's all condensed. So you could just read it 1 or 2 pages at a time.
It's interesting. I'm going to read that. I haven't read that, but that's that whole concept of like what you put in your body and who you're around, proximity. Like if you're around toxic people, or like I don't know, the analogy I always like to use: if you want to get into shape, go to a gym. If you want to get drunk, go to a bar. Like these kind of things. So and that's your health is obviously a big part of that too. So Tools of Titan is what I'm going to read. That's good. And then the final question I wanted to talk to you about: a lot of people want to take a risk, whether it's in business or they want to quit a job and become a real estate agent or start a business. And you've started many. You constantly said on this podcast that investing in yourself is a big deal. What is something you would tell somebody who's on the fence of trying something risky, that they just have not gathered the courage to jump into a career switch or starting a business? What would you tell somebody who constantly is thinking about something and they're just not doing it?
Like, everyone has a different risk tolerance, and only that person can answer why they haven't pulled the trigger yet of like taking that leap. But there's a way to do it risk mitigated. So when I started Cupcakes, I actually still kept my full-time job at the law firm. I just had to work more. So I was working at the firm 5.5 days a week. I had an operational partner, Danielle, but then nights and weekends I was baking, I was running deliveries, I was setting up events. And then I eventually did this like gradual fade out where like I went from full-time salary to part-time hourly. Like it was like a kind of a chopping down of my responsibilities there so that I could ramp up on the Cupcake side once it was like up and going. So everyone has a different journey with it. But if it is something that's like on your heart and like you can't stop thinking about it, you have to find a way to execute on it.
Just figure it out. What when you quit being a lawyer? I mean, that's a long process. Undergrad, law school, passing bars. What did your family say? Like, did your mom and dad like freak out, or were they just like, okay, go ahead, go be a baker?
Yeah, the hardest part about all of that was not like leaving the job and leaving the security of it. It was telling my parents, and my mom in particular. So my mom's like Asian tiger mom. So like that Christmas that I told them, like she didn't talk to me. She like ignored me because she was so mad that I was doing this. So, and it's hard. Like my mom and I are very close. So I think that's also difficult when you have people in your life who that you're so used to being supportive of you all the time. My mom is very supportive of me, and yet she wasn't supportive of that decision. And sometimes it's hard, right? When you have someone that you love and respect so much and you want them to be in your corner on this and they're not, and yet you're going to push forward anyway.
That's Tony Robbins has this thing. He calls it the rocking chair test. Is when you're like old and you're in a rocking chair on your porch. Is if thinking about things that you wish you would have tried, and the importance of trying it. And if you fail, at least you tried it. It didn't work out. But that is something that you and I have talked about many times. Is try. Like if something's scary, if it's hiring somebody or maybe switching companies or starting that company, if there's a will, there's a way. And the best way, again, with the theme of this, is talk to people who've maybe done that, and they can give you some advice to do it. But I give you all the credit in the world for continuously trying things, and you've off this podcast, you've told me some companies you've
sometimes they don't work out.
Yeah, you have some horror stories of something you invested in that like didn't work out, and you're like, oh God,
There's
I can't believe I tried that.
There's companies I've started that didn't work out, right? So like BioGlow Tech, which we rebranded to Glow, they were light emitting plants that lasted like a year and a half.
So plants that glue in the dark.
Yes.
That's something future, and that didn't work out. So that's okay. I mean, you had a couple losses, but you had a lot of wins, and now you're here talking about all of them. Like there's other ones I'd love to go into, but we'd be here all day. So I was just final question. Is there something fun you're looking forward to in 2024?
I'm just super excited that, like we commented on, that it is an election year. I think a lot of people are like very nervous around that. And I just think that like, I think within chaos always comes opportunity. So
absolutely.
I'm super excited for like, what is that going to mean on the real estate side? Right now, so my old boss from the law firm, now he is a United States bankruptcy trustee here in Nevada. In Chapter 7 filings, so these are, personal BKs that are liquidation. Chapter 7 filings are up 30% year over year.
Yeah.
So like in the debtor profile, these are folks who have jobs. So it's unlike before where like people didn't have a job and they're filing bankruptcy because they can't afford anything. So debtor profile, these are folks who have jobs.
Okay.
They are over leveraged on like everything in their life. They've got tons of credit card debt. They've got multiple vehicles with multiple payments on them. They have all the toys like side-by-sides and four-wheelers or whatever that they got promotional financing on back in 2020 for 0% down or 0% APR, 0% down, 0% APR. And now those payments are coming due. And meanwhile, their rent has gone up, their gas has gone up, their groceries have gone up.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, during COVID, when everything was locked down, we mentioned the casinos were closed. I remember I was at Bass Pro Shop one time, and they sell boats and ATVs, and on the displays in front of the boat or whatever, they have the monthly payment in big red letters of whatever, it's $299 or $300, and then on the bottom they have the black letters of what the total cost is, but then they don't factor in registration, insurance, the trailer, all this stuff. And like you said, they did 0% financing for a while, and yeah, those things are coming due now, and all the other inflation has made everything else go up. So it's going to be an interesting time in real estate. Unfortunately, we've had some political stuff that has not helped our situation, but we don't need to get into that right now. But yeah, it's going to be the rest of the year is going to be interesting with the election. But that's actually a topic that I was talking about with Dan Doherty on this was the no debt thing. I'm a big believer in keeping your personal overhead low because it allows you more opportunity. Do you have any insight on how you personally do that? I mean, are you kind of a low debt person? Or are you one of these agents who love to go like lease cars and lean against the get the tax write-offs and that kind of thing? And I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I just like to say what I do. I know a lot of brokers that go buy certain cars and stuff because there are tax benefits. I just would rather have the cheaper car and not have any debt and just pay the taxes. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, so it's definitely low debt for sure. It's just, I think, just a product of my upbringing with my mom always just being like, no debt, like you have to pay cash for everything. So certainly that mentality, is served well. But so I was just with Ken McElroy Monday in Scottsdale.
He's got a great podcast.
Great podcast. And we were talking about just how do we reduce tax liability, especially if you have some like capital gains stuff coming up from real estate, right? So if you're not going to 1031 and if you have some capital gains, action items coming up, how do you reduce that? So some people will like Ken, right? He bought a jet, right? But it's because it's 100% bonus depreciation where he's taking the full amount as a write-off in year one. What I learned from Ken is that billboards are also considered equipment and they're eligible for 100% bonus depreciation.
That's interesting.
So I love the idea of being able to actually reduce your taxable income while buying a cash generating asset.
So that's actually a good way to wrap this up.
As opposed to leasing a car.
We were talking about specialization. Like I primarily do industrial real estate. And I consider myself an expert in that field, but this is where hiring experts to help you is a huge benefit. So find yourself a strategic partner that's an accountant or an enrolled agent and walk through your businesses with them to help you save money. So like what you just said, people buy airplanes because of the depreciation or a work truck or a billboard. I'm going to look into this one when we're done.
I know.
That's a big piece of success where you mentioned partners and that, but find yourself a good accountant because they'll probably tell you something of a purchase that you'd be surprised will save you money in the long run. That's interesting about the billboards though. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. How can people get a hold of you or follow you on social media? What's the best way to follow you or get a hold of you?
Yeah, so Instagram and all the platforms at Lisa Song Sutton, and my website is lisasongSutton.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.